Hello my friends and welcome to FISHTORY. Today we have a really exciting episode. We are here in the heart of Seattle and we are going to check out a salmon spawning stream. Now, since 1987, they have been putting salmon back into this stream. This stream is known as Piper's Creek and it is in Carkeek Park here in Seattle, Washington. If we were to walk about half a mile that way, there is the beach on the other side. And if we were to go up a very steep hill, about 400 feet in elevation, we would be up into the neighborhoods of Ballard / Northwest Seattle. And so this stream actually died out in its salmon run in 1927. But since 1987, a tribe nearby, not the Duwamish that is from specifically right here in Seattle, but the Suquamish tribe, which is from the region as a whole and who had social, cultural, and regional events right here, has been working with various people and providing new fry and eggs and working in tandem with schools and nonprofits as well as the Parks Department to bring back the salmon. And so they will breed them in classrooms, they'll hatch the eggs, they'll breed them, and then they'll bring the little alvin or really young fish to the river. They'll put them in and they will go out to sea. Some hang out for a little while and get a little bit bigger in these creeks. Some go into lakes and things depending on which creek or river they're in Seattle. But these ones are chum salmon and they are returning from the ocean. So they've been in the ocean getting big and eating. And from the very moment that they enter this fresh water, they no longer care about anything like food or their body on a biological level doesn't even care. They no longer even replenish their old cellular self or scales. They actually transform every bit of tissue they have left over in their stomach and things into muscle so that they can make it up this river or creek, over logs, over rocks, and into the spawning grounds and the fine sand and gravel beds where they are known to ancestrally spawn. So let's take a look. So here we are at the river, and this is where the salmon have been going through it. They have been using every bit of muscle and protein and energy that they have stored up from eating out in the ocean, from eating smaller fish, from eating insects, eggs, you name it, whatever's out there that fits in their mouth, they're gonna eat it. And as soon as they hit this fresh water, that's it for them. They're done eating and they're done replenishing any of their cells. But these are chum salmon, and these salmon look so beat up because they are headed up the river. And basically whoever gets their eggs furthest up the river has the best chances of their eggs hatching and not getting discovered or eaten by the others. Now, some of this works evolutionarily in numbers. So there are actually thousands and thousands of fish that will go upriver every single year. And part of that is a numbers game. So you get a certain amount of fish, and with each fish laying 2,000 to 5,000 eggs, you end up with a lot of chances for a successful spawn. But you also have some fish that will go even farther or even to more extremes, jumping over more obstacles and going farther inland to try and have their eggs not in the main area where everybody else is spawning. And also what you're seeing going on, which is kind of grisly, is you're seeing some of the males right here with the hooked snouts. They're actually grabbing onto other male salmon that are living, and they are fighting them and pulling them back because they are exhausted. Like I said, their stomach lining has turned into muscle. All the organs that are non-essential for living, all the tissue that's extra, all the fat, all of it gets burned away or turned into protein and muscle so that they can go a little bit further upstream in their life. And there is the biggest male right here in this little section of the stream. and he is basically grabbing some of the other salmon every once in a while and pulling them back because he wants to spawn with the female salmon that are also the hardiest that have made it upstream. And they're all trying to get to actually shallow areas with really good sand and gravel that is a nice riffle surface from the motion of the water. And while they can go upstream fairly easily, they have a lot of power in them, they have to pause and wait. One, because they're acclimating to the water, but two, they're also kind of scoping out mates and also holding back other males at this point in time. But as I said before, they have no interest at food or eating at this point in their life because they are just hoping to spawn this one last time. And as you can see, in this same creek, there are literally thousands of salmon that have already spawned, or some of them may not have even gotten the chance to spawn, but they have passed away and died along the banks of this. Now, if we were in a more uninhabited area, we'd have all sorts of things like coyotes, grizzlies, raccoons, bobcats, you name it, eating these salmon. But even without that, the forest itself eats these salmon. They become nitrates, nitrites, ammonia, and nutrients for the forest, which these trees that are holding up the hillsides literally will use to grow. So the salmon are tied to the very fiber of the landscape here. If they weren't growing the ferns, the moss, the plants with their nutrients, it wouldn't hold back the hillside with all of the roots it needs. It wouldn't feed the food chain. It wouldn't grow the salal or the camas or the Oregon grapeberries. It wouldn't grow the cedar trees. And all of this is connected. The natives knew this very well, and the return of the salmon was seen as something very sacred. Now, this is just one species of salmon we're talking about here, coming up one creek. But imagine, in its peak, these salmon were coming up in the tens of thousands up every creek like this. And sometimes 2 or 3 species in each creek out of the 5, arguably 6 salmon we have that spawn here in Washington State, and specifically here in Seattle. Now, the other thing that's going on right now is this is the rainy time of year here usually, but we've had less rain than normal until very recently, so the water's a little lower than it would normally be. Normally the water would be somewhere right around there, and because of this, the fish are having a little more challenging time navigating up the river. But we'll see how it ends up next year when we see the new fry. One incredible bit of news is that over 1,800 fish were seen coming from the ocean into this creek each day on Saturday and Sunday. And normally, since 1987, in the 90s and 2000s, that was around 480 fish on average per day. And it has been kind of steadily growing, but this last few years, there's been a big change. And we don't know whether that's the rehabilitation of a lot of these streams and watersheds, the stopping using of a lot of different chemicals and fertilizers and things, or whether it's maybe something in apex predators that would normally be eating these salmon, or fisheries that would be catching these salmon that could be having an influence on the numbers. But regardless, it's rather inspiring to see so many of them in these streams this year, and it is by far a record-breaking year since they have returned. And it just seems fitting that maybe in the year 2027 we'll get back somewhere near the actual spawning numbers that we had when the fish died out. Realistically, we probably haven't had the spawning numbers that are native to this creek since 1827. So a whole 200 years may be required before we get something resembling the full circle of life yet again. But it brings tourists, it brings money, and even the natives, the locals here, love watching this, love being a part of this natural cycle. And just like the leaves falling this time of year from the trees and them floating downstream, the nutrients and the baby salmon eggs being deposited are part of the landscape here in the Pacific Northwest. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of FISHTORY. I hope you like the content outside of the aquarium hobby, and if you do or don't, let me know in the comments. Also, liking and subscribing always helps. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.